We are supposed to play outside.
We hear guns and the whole community somehow was set on fire or something like that.
People just come and bombing people, fighting, a lot of fight.
He shut them down, he shut them down. And when you run, he shot you, he shot you. So that's why made me separate with my mom.
All the time, gunshot all the time.
I ran away and don't have time to tell them, hey, come with me.
In every situation, there is a solution.
My name is David Kuala Kwal. I'm from Sudan.
I'm Ibrahim Bijung Ahmed. I'm from Sudan.
My name is Gadjang.
Gabriel Akol. I'm from Sudan.
I'm from southern Sudan.
I came from Sudan.
I'm really Dinka.
I'm from Dinka.
I'm Nuer.
I belong to Dinka tribe.
I'm one of Sudanese diaspora.
Sudan has been scarred by a bloody civil war for over 2 decades. An estimated 2 million people have been killed and 4.5 million have been internally displaced.
Sudan is the largest country by territory in Africa. Very, very diverse country. There are hundreds of different ethnic groups or tribes living there. No one is in the majority. There are people who are both of African and of Arab origin. There are people who are Muslims and others who are practicing traditional African religions, and a small Christian minority.
It's a country that sort of lies across the divide between the Islamic world and the non-Islamic world. So that Sudan, like Chad, like Mali, like Niger to an extent, includes non-Muslims and Muslim populations, which brings a particular set of problems. And in the Sudan, they've been very dramatic.
Sudan now is ruled by a government that was not elected. It was the result of a military coup in 1989, about 13 years ago, that overthrew an democratically elected government. The people behind the coup, it turned out, were Islamists.
The history of the Sudan has always been much a history of what is happening in the northern Sudan, the way the South ignored. But internally, the British, when they came and they established their rule in the Sudan, their administration, the first thing they discovered was that there were two distinct societies. The people of the southern Sudan, who were African and non-Muslim, and the people in the north, who were, of course, Arabized Africans and Muslims.
And the British began pressuring in one way or another for the Egyptians and the Egyptian colonial government in the Sudan to move against slavery and also to open up southern Sudan to Christian missionaries. An agreement is made to allow Christian missionaries in the southern part of Sudan, not to allow them in the Islamic areas. And that continues through the 20th century up till 1956, when Sudan formally becomes independent.
When the British decided to give local rule, self-rule to the north, to the Sudan, Southerners knew that this was a trend towards independence. And the South was afraid that if things were left to go as it is, power will go into the hands of the North and the South would be left behind.
British evaluating their interests, what interests do they have in Southern Sudan and what interests do they have in the Suez Canal? Those they had in Suez Canal were more viable and promising than the Southern Sudan, whom they considered a poor land, uneducated people, landlocked, and is nothing in the map of the world.
Suez Canal crisis was there. That was the main trade route for the British to the east. In order to please Egypt, because Egypt also had a concern in the Sudan, it was good for the British to have one Sudan.
The British clearly gave the most power to the Northerners, which meant giving it to Muslims. By the same token, they attempted to create some sort of accommodation for Christians in the South and the area of missionary activity in the South by getting some assurances that the Christian missions would be allowed to remain there. But at the same token, I think both the Muslim North and the British saw the Southerners as backward, less civilized, and that this region should be under the control of the North with certain guarantees.
Basically, the British did was, let's get out and let them solve their problem. But it wasn't easy like that.
Sudan became independent in 1956 with the northern city Khartoum as her capital, and the tension between the North and South has never been completely resolved.
And how to incorporate those two parts into a functioning, modern, independent state is the great challenge of Sudan in the 20th century, which, as a half century of civil war shows, they've never met that challenge very well.
There has been war in Sudan almost the entire time since independence. There was one exception to the war. That was a break between 1972 and 1983. At that time, the dictator, the military dictator of the day, Numeri, agreed to allow autonomy for the southern region. And so the South enjoyed a much more democratic rule than the North did at that time in terms of local government, with elections and so forth. However, the same dictator just tore up the autonomy agreement in 1983, and the Southerners went back to war.
Oppressed and marginalized, many Southerners joined the SPLA, Sudan People's Liberation Army, led by the US-educated John Garang.
One of the things that pushed the Southerners to pick up arms was, of course, politics in the country as a whole was stifled. It was military government. The country was ruled by military decree. But worse was that the policy of the government to Islamize and Arabicize the South.
The missionary schools were taken by the government. English was thrown away. Arabic was introduced, and you cannot go to school unless you adopt an Arabic name, unless you become a Muslim.
Where there was a church, they would come and build a mosque next to the church. I mean, you don't do things like that.
Among some people in the Islamic world, of the beliefs that Islamic principles and Islamic law need to be more generally applied to entire societies.
There is still a lot of pressure to convert to Islam wherever the government has a military presence throughout the country of Sudan. However, this is a very special kind of Islam that they have. It's more politicized Islam, and they run into conflict even with other Muslims. They're seen as coming into an area or trying to convert a whole sect of people, of Muslims, already practicing Muslims, to practice Islam the way they want it to be practiced.
But again, that became a justification for invading the South, to extend Islam, just as the British used it as an excuse for the spreading of Christianity and missions as an excuse for invading southern Sudan, a century, the previous century, 100 years before. That, coupled with the fact that in the 1980s and the 1990s, there's a huge flood of arms into Africa, and arms in the 90s become very cheap. I mean, you can buy a Kalashnikov for $10, $12. There are a lot of weapons floating around, which means not only do you have increased tension, you also have increased violence, and with increased violence, increased numbers of deaths, which creates more tension, and the whole spiral goes up.
Caught between the violence of the government army and the SPLA, one of the products of this spiral is the Sudanese refugees, whom we have come to know as the Lost Boys.
They are a group of Sudanese who were fleeing from the devastation and what we would now call ethnic cleansing in Sudan.
It's really in the very early part of the war, 83, 84, 85. Sudan government army plus their allies and the militia would raid villages, burn them down, killing people and all these things. And as they normally take people by surprise, many of the elderly people were killed, their parents were killed. they were literally forced out of where they used to live. So very young boys, some from the age of 6, 7 and all those things, had to be wandering in the bush.
Both the government army and the rebel groups conducted raids and adopted a controversial scorched earth tactic, setting the land aflame after the raid, destroying everything in the village. Many Southerners were also enslaved to the north.
The rebel group, the Sudan People's Liberation Army, was recruiting young men to go to Ethiopia to be trained in its army. The Ethiopian government of Mengistu, which was aligned with the Soviet Union and Cuba at the time, was sponsoring this rebel group. So they took a lot of boys from the south and encouraged them to go to the Ethiopian refugee camp where they would get an education. Actually, some of them got much more of a military than a civilian education.
When war started, the schools were closed down in southern Sudan. The government decided to close down the school because of security reasons and all the other aspects. And this young man, you have to venture to another country where you become a refugee, get a chance of education and all that stuff.
They came, and burned the houses up. Nobody will become Muslim. So they decided to kill people. So they came to a village. First, we did not run away because we thought that they may come and looking for something. But when they came there, they start killing people, they tell you that they want to take you to Khartoum. And Dinka sometimes, they are very brave and they don't want, I believe what somebody tell them. They say, no, we can't go to Khartoum, you better kill us. The Arabs say, okay, he shut them down. And when you run, he shot you. So that's why it made me separate with my mom.
I was really scared. I can see them, but I didn't have time to see them. I have to run away because maybe some of the children we were playing with were shot, dead, and I have to run away.
When we keep running, come home, we find nobody at home, and the house was burned, and other people were killed. The next day I decided to go back, but there were a elder who was running was us. He said nobody gonna going home because now people were killing and the war is still existing there. And we asked, what about our parents? He said, I don't know myself and you don't know yourself. So what to do is to save your life. That's it. If they are still alive, you will get them some time to come. If they died, then they died. If you died too, you died. If they're still alive, they will hear that you are dead, and that's it. It's just a war, and that's the disadvantage of war.
We just walk like that, and when we go that way, we find that it was another country.
3 months walking from Sudan to Ethiopia, and we don't have, there's no good sleep, no mattress, no blanket. You just go sleep on floor, and then tomorrow you get up and you go.
They might have been 3 or 4 years old when the soldiers came in and invaded their villages. You can just picture these little bitty children who were alone. And so little groups of children sort of gathered together, and as many adults as were around did try to help them and guide them. But there were really a lot of just little kids following the crowds getting towards eventually Ethiopia.
To reach Ethiopia almost 28 because we don't move all the time. Then there is no water on the way. We just move at night because also on the way there is an enemy. Some of the town on the way that are Arab soldiers.
Do you have shoes? Do you have water? Do you have food?
You don't have shoes, you don't have water, you don't have food. So you just somebody like that, and you have nothing, carrying nothing. We across the river Nile.
And we came to a desert called Tigling. So what you do is, there were some trees that are eatable in Sudan. So instead to die, we feed on on the leaves of the trees that can keep us alive to reach Ethiopia. A lot of people who were actually very weak, they cannot work because of hunger and diseases. They decide to stay there. They say that no, we cannot work again. They went under a tree and sleep there, and then they die there. and the wild animal come and eat them.
Like hyena, if you get you lion, so they can eat you. Because if you are a small boy and nobody defend you at that time.
They would be huddled together in a group of, say, 3 to 5 little boys. You know, you can just kind of imagine them like little puppies huddled together. And in the morning, one of them would be gone because the hyenas had gotten him. And the other 4 would have to go on.
Sometimes I heard them. Now, uncle, where are my mom and dad? They said, that oh, there is somebody told us. They are on the way. They will come. So don't worry about them. So this is the way that they kept me going until Ethiopia. Otherwise, I could have died in the desert too. Sometimes they tell me, oh, they went ahead. Somebody told her that they are ahead. This is the way that they deceive me instead to work.
I was really frustrated, and I was crying for the whole of the journey every day.
Some walk and walk and walk, and later on they sit down and say, I'm not going to move again anymore. So he would remain there because you can't do anything for him.
I was really lose hope that I never reach that place because they always work.
I was scared, and I miss my parents also. And when I was thinking, I didn't have a choice. I don't have to do something to solve that problem. So I have to work. If I die tomorrow, then that's my day. If I didn't die, and I have to keep working, or maybe there will be something good in there.
If you get wet soil, you just chew it and see whether it can help. If it helps, fine. If it don't help, you get another alternative way. And drink your urine. Yeah, and you eat the leaf of the wild trees.
You saw people do that?
I did it by myself, but I'm sometimes ashamed to say it. I don't tell it frequently because I'm ashamed of it. Drinking your own urine and eating soil, it may sound crazy to those who have never been in problem.
If sometimes I say I don't want to go, they say come here, come and see the bone. They show now the bone of people die. They say, do you want to die like this guy?
What makes you to cross the desert is to strengthen your heart.
Sometimes you feel exhausted and you don't feel like to go ahead, but at that situation you have to encourage one another.
If somebody is crying and is younger than me, I just say, okay, it is only 10 minutes to get to where we are going. So let's get going.
I know that in every problem that human being face, there must be a solution later.
After we work, does it, we get in Ethiopia, we get a lot of care. Already Southern Sudan government was there.
We've been to Ethiopia, that's from 1987 to 1991.
The lost boys basically were kept in very atypical situation in Ethiopia, where they were given their own camp. I mean, a camp that was like 1,000 boys just by themselves, which is not the traditional way they lived at all. And they were boys up to the age of 18, so there were, you know, from age 9 to 18, and there they were given military training. Many of them were sent into battle.
I think in every war, the people who fought were very young people. Most of them would be called child. And I think it is the environment of the war and the whole chaos of the war situation that young people choose to fight. Maybe one would have said that the SPLA should have stopped and said, don't come in. But you can't say that to the people who have been forced away from their homes, their parents have been. There is a bitterness in them. Maybe they want to get a gun and revenge.
They don't do really to force you because you are a child. But some children were there. Like now, when you go to Sudan, you get some children with 14. According to the situation, and they are carrying gun, fighting.
1991, when Mengistu's government collapsed, then situation changed. So they were again on the move, which brought them from Ethiopia to Kenya, ending up in Kakuma.
The Ethiopians rebels, actually those who were fighting against the government, so they have killed some of us. and how they killed some direct, but they killed some indirectly, because people were sitting along the river. That's where they have camped at. So by then the troop came and it started shooting.
People have to run, and some of the boys, they don't know how to swim. So we just ran into water, and so many people lost their life. That's the incident. I have never seen it before. So many people lost their life.
Crocodile eat some, and people who don't know how to swim dry in there. And even if you know how to swim, and somebody saw you swimming, they have to grab you so that you can help him or her, and you have to drown, both of you.
And actually a few of them survived, but majority remain in the river by then. That's River Gilo.
Tens of thousands of boys and hundreds of thousands of refugees went back to Sudan, where they became internally displaced persons.
It was like a recurring nightmare. The lost boys were sent back to Sudan, where the civil war was still going on. They had to embark on yet another journey.
They were in a town that the government captured in 1992, and they all ran to the nearest place of refuge.
Everybody was scared. You didn't know whether you can make it. You just say, oh God, why don't you let me cross this desert?
When we walked to Kenya, it was 5 days walking.
Nothing changed. That's the same way we did it before.
You know that if you go to Kenya, you will not be captured again by Khartoum government, and you will not be sold to slavery, and you will not be somebody's servant, and you will not fight for what you don't know. Because if you get captured, they may take you to your army, and you may go and fight for what you don't know. And you may be converted to Islam, which is not your choice.
All the civilians, and with them these boys, ran to northern Kenya, and were in a refugee camp which is called Kakuma in northern Kenya, which exists today.
The whole refugee camp was about 15 miles long by about 3 miles wide, so their entire life was spent within that small confined space.
The first thing the boys had to do is to build their own houses.
UNHCR, they just organized 5 people to build one hut. We just build 5. And they provide the material.
Mud houses sometimes, you can have a scorpion inside there, you can have a snake inside there, and there were many insects which are actually very dangerous inside there.
They pounded out the tins that the cooking oil would come in. They'd pound them out, and then they'd make them into shingles for their roofs. It was kind of inspiring, actually, to somebody like me or any American who would go there, because you'd see these little huts, and the shingles would say USA, 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 because the corn oil and the soy oil is donated from the United States, and it says USA on the tins. And they would very artistically create these roofs that said USA, 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 USA.
The ones that ended up in Kakuma were not the entire group of boys that had been in Ethiopia. Many of those went in other directions inside southern Sudan. And I believe the boys who went to Kakuma were in the 10 to 20,000 range. But as I said, boys who took that journey in 1992, now 10 years has passed and they're no longer boys.
Most of the lost boys lived in Kakuma for more than a decade. Even though they now have shelter and a relatively peaceful environment, the situation in Kakuma certainly isn't ideal.
Oh man, it was just awful. It was really, really, really a hard situation. But I have to temper that by saying that, as far as I can tell, the situation in Kakuma was considerably better than the situation in Sudan. The food rations, for example, were very, very limited. And if you remember what all these young men looked like when they first got here, little skinny, tiny legs, and very, very thin.
The life in Kakuma was so terrible, you know. People eat like once time a day, and sometimes you can have 3 days without eating.
It was not a good place, because we live a life of refugee, you know.
I mean, you know little margarine tubs, you know, that we get margarine, you know, get a pound of margarine or butter. That would, they'd fill something like that, and that with like either lentils or, you know, dried peas or something. That was their bean ration for 2 weeks. They got, you know, that you know, a little margarine tub. When there was cooking oil, then they got like a little tomato paste can of cooking oil. And very, very, very occasionally, I think like during the time I was in the camp, maybe twice, they got an extra distribution of something like fresh vegetables. But twice in a year, you get a couple of moldy potatoes.
There was water, but water is not enough because water has to come in certain hours, so maybe like 8 in the morning up to 10 and it cut.
People spend an inordinate amount of time standing in line trying to get water. And then when they got it, it wasn't very much. Each person would get about maybe sort of the equivalent of a quart of water a day. So that quart had to cook their corn and beans, it had to wash their clothes, it had to wash their bodies.
We were staying, you know, in a dark place where there's no electricity, no television, no whatever.
We stayed there, but Kenya was not safe also.
The people around the area, Turkana people, they're not good. They kill people at night. If you have your food or anything that you have, they come and say, bring this. Then you have to give them. If you don't, they shoot you.
There was a severe drought, and so the Turkana population, that's the main population that lives there, that group of people are herders. They herd goats and camels. The drought was so bad that the camels were dying. So some of the people right around the refugee camp didn't have enough food from their government's food distribution. The unaccompanied kids, they had to like take turns going to school because somebody had to stay home and guard the food supply.
One benefit of being in Kakuma is the opportunity to get an education.
We really stay and they provided school. It was really very interesting, very good school, Kenyan school.
The refugee camps offer school, so they actually aspire to become refugees so they can get an education, which is a comment on how very bad the situation is inside southern Sudan.
The Lost Boys spent more than a decade in Kakuma. They have grown into young men, and there's no future for them in the refugee camp. The story of the Lost Boys finally generated attention from the West.
The United States had made a plan with the United Nations to make resettlement possible for up to 5,000 of these children and young men. It's really incredibly complex. You have to identify, are these really the people? What really happened to them? There has to be a genuine refugee claim, make sure that they genuinely are unaccompanied.
Week after week, week after week. The time we start, they start process, they schedule your name. That they mention you're gonna have interview.
They ask you what led you leave your country, and how long have you been living by yourself, and what made you separated from your parents.
It's scary. It's scary. Sometimes they ask you, do you have a girlfriend? If you have a girlfriend, you say, I have a girlfriend. You're gonna fail. They're gonna let you fail.
How many times your mom been married? That question we don't like. Because we say no. Some people they feel aggressive. If you feel upset, then you fail interview. You will not come.
Yeah, they asked me too. Yeah, I was really wondering why do they ask that question. I say it's one time. And they say how many husbands do your mom have? I say, hey, what is it? I say it's only my dad.
They say, have you got married? And we say no. After that, they say, do you have children? Some people say, I told you I never got married. How can I get children? If you say that way, then you fail interview. They need you. They just ask you to tell you whether you feel upset easily.
You have a wife. You say I have a wife. They say okay. They take your case back to UNHCR, so that they're gonna make your process to come with your wife next time.
They don't need me to speak English. They need me to speak either Arabic or Dinka. Someone there in translated. If the guy translated wrong and I say no, then I fail interview. They say, why do you correct the both? Some people they say no, I didn't say that. Then you fail.
When they do process, they tell you that wait until your name appear on the board.
You feel fast. You really feel happy that you're going America. Yeah, you like that.
It was a terrible dilemma. It wasn't me finally who was making that decision. It was a very complex decision of who could qualify and who couldn't qualify. We realized that there are children and young men there now who should have been considered. That the list was drawn up with some errors, not intentional, deliberately leaving people out, but just some mistakes. And so there are several hundred people there who should have been considered and who have not been allowed to be considered. Among them, the lost girls.
Girls who have been effectively, without family or cast off, abandoned, lost, who are in the refugee camps, in the hundreds, not in the thousands.
When the villages were invaded, they would come in and they would kill all the adult men that they could kill. They would round up the cattle, and they would round up all the women and girls and take them away. And that just left the little boys behind because the little boys were of no economic value to them.
The problem that many girls face is that even though they might be on their own in a refugee camp, they may have an uncle or another male relative back in Sudan or in the refugee camp who wants them to get married, because then they would be the ones who would get the cows or the dowry upon marriage. So we understand there is a lot of pressure and force brought upon young women to get married, even though they don't want to.
I don't think you want to say that every situation was a situation in which the girls were exploited, or that the intention was to exploit. In that society, the custom is that for a man to show that he is capable of taking care of a wife and children by offering what we call a bride price or a dowry. And it's not true that you say that you're buying a wife. That's sometimes the way it's been translated into English, but that's not really accurate. A man has to prove that he's a person of substance, that he can gather the resources to be capable of taking care of somebody. But certainly in some instances, this was just like pennies from heaven for these families that had taken in these girls.
It is a dilemma for relief agencies to decide who gets a chance for resettlement and who doesn't. While there are complex issues surrounding the lost girls, a lucky selected group of lost boys receive a ticket out of Kakuma.
I was nervous because that was my first time to fly. It is also a small plane. It's really very rough. It was really very rough for me. I didn't enjoy it.
Some people, they go in airplane, they are crying because they are going different culture where they do not even know.
Well, I was so happy indeed. I was so happy because people tell me that in America, actually, they say that it's like paradise sometimes, because there is freedom in America, there is everything in America, education, nobody will disturb you. You can go all over United States if you want, and you can just do anything. Nobody can disturb you. So I will feel happy indeed. I was know that my life will be better.
They say when you go America, you go to school, you work and go to school, but they say America nobody force you.
These selected few young men are given a new future, but they certainly face a new challenge coming to a whole different world.
The first group of lost boys arrived May 15th of 2001, 5 young men together.
I don't know what place is Dallas. I don't know what kind of place is it. So I just came like that. It was just God planning.
When you learn about America and you never came, you just must imagine that, oh, I think these guys, they got a tall building, a lot of car, and they got a lot of money, and a lot of food, all these things. You just imagine. Yeah, they got a lot of plane, fly.
We were told, when you go, you will see different things, because that is a different well and this is a different well. So we were a little bit prepared, but when you are told and you have not seen something in the actual ground, you may be surprised and you may shock sometimes.
Pretty surprised, pretty confused. I think we were pretty surprised and pretty confused. It was sort of an encounter, I think, that was very similar for all of us. I was immediately impressed, though, with their spirit. From the first day to the present day, I've been so impressed with their spirit for life.
In so many ways, I mean, they were truly at the mercy of the people that had opened their arms to them, because they came here, each one with a small gym bag with nothing.
No, not at all. They couldn't be intimidating to anybody, I don't think. There's a gentleness and a kindness in their eyes and a spirit like I've never seen. It's just infectious. I mean, they're just warm and friendly.
She drugged me over there, and then after the first visit, I said, let me come in and help, you know, type thing. So it's really just too much fun.
It's only my clothes and then shoes, and that's it. Yeah, I didn't bring anything. And then radio tape. Yeah, for the music. Church music, and then my culture music.
From day one, the list of orientation to a modern lifestyle is lengthy.
It's a long list of tasks to do, but in those tasks of teaching how to cook, how to turn the lights on, how to use a gas stove, all those kinds of things, come the responsibility of the shots and the paperwork and the food stamp applications and Social Security and a lot of that. So in all that experience, then there's bonding that takes place and trust builds.
Help them open bank accounts, teach them how to use the soaps that are in their house, teach them how to cook certain things, bring them over for holidays or for afternoons to watch TV or to join the family, take them to the zoo, teach them how to use the bus system and the train system, just everyday life, you know. I mean, it was all brand new.
Especially the first year, you tend to just be a reactionary and take care of that need. And their culture is very interesting. They do not ask for hardly anything. And I've been told, well, even if you're hungry, you don't say, can you give me some food? People should be able to see that you're hungry or something like that. So they don't ask for hardly anything. So after you learn that, then you learn to ask them questions, what have you been eating?
And we spent hours the first time in the store, and they wanted to see what everything was, and what is this, and frozen vegetables, and you know, what is that about?
To wash your clothes in laundry, we have nothing like that in Africa. We wash clothes in our hand, and when we came here, there was a machine, and people say that this is where you wash your clothes, and we don't know how.
I showed them the gas stove, and I said, you know, showed them how to turn it on, how to light it, and so forth, and left. And then came back the next day, and they opened the door, and I could just smell the gas pouring out, and I was just, is everybody all right, you know? And so I went in and discovered that they had not turned off one of the knobs completely, and this gas was just pouring out. So that was another teachable moment. Learning to use those kind of appliances that we think are pretty benign that are really can be quite dangerous.
When I came, I was feared. They teach us when you get fire at home, because it's very hard for us sometimes to get fire. You call police, everything you call police.
They were used to being taken care of. Somebody used to cook for them, even if it was one meal a day, they just had to go. They're not used to having jobs. They did work in the refugee camps, but they weren't used to having to get up at a certain time and be consistent in showing up, how to use an alarm clock. I think it was just overwhelming.
Culturally, some first encounters could be quite shocking too.
Oh, the way people dress. Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, because you can see somebody can go half naked and people can wear skirt up to this, especially ladies up to this end. But it is not, I've never seen that before. So it was kind of shock to me. But now I'm used to it.
The one thing we find that's easy for the Lost Boys to assimilate to, surprisingly, is the food.
I like pizza. I like pizza.
Hamburger.
I like hamburger and pizza.
Well, I like pizza so much and McDonald's, but I don't know how to make them. But these are the favorite one. I like them so much.
Like most Americans, the Lost Boys started their new lives in debt. The plane ride here isn't free. They will have to pay back the $800-somewhat plane ticket just 90 days after arrival. Job hunting is a priority.
because one of our biggest concerns is getting the employables employed as quickly as possible. All of the government programs exist are very temporary, transitional, and are really just designed to help people get on their feet. So we want to make sure that we have employable adults working as soon as possible so that they can support themselves and their families. And they're all, that's usually their goal too, is when am I going to get a job?
We were all too worried how to get a job. It's very hard. But they say you can worry when you go for the first day, your coworker will look job for you. After 90 days, 60 days, something like that, 3 months or 2 months, they will look job for you for the first job you want. Because you are going to pay bill, you need to pay the loan when we came here. And you need to pay apartment. You need to buy food for yourself.
Within 3 months, they pay for the bill, and they take you to hospital. When the 3 months are ended, they take you where you can get a job. And if you lose that job, it will be you to find a job by yourself or without the friend of yours.
When I came here, that is the first day that I take my responsibility to get food for myself. Since all this time when I grew up, I was depend to parents. When I separate from parents, I depend to UNHCR, something like that. I never take my responsibility to look food for myself.
With all the requirements and all the examinations and things and appointments that they have to go through, it's almost impossible to start working until you're here 2 or 3 months.
Some, like Abraham Alion, worked at tent jobs.
When I go to job, I take a train and take a bus again to work. And if I didn't find no job that day, I have to come back home. And I still keep going because actually they were nice to me, because I tried to work hard. And because of that, they decided to put me permanent, and now I am permanent.
Sometimes I would take them to look for a job, and I always felt it was helpful if we were there, because I would, meet the manager and say, this is a person who has a good work ethic, because they do. Their work ethic is amazing. And they have the backing of the outreach program. But here was a person who could look me in the eye and talk very strongly to me, and then when they would meet the manager, their eyes would go down, because it was impolite for them to talk to somebody and look them in the eyes who is considered an elder to them.
Among my brothers, I was the first guy to get a job. When I came May 17, and I stayed July 30. I get my first job. Then I was operate my chin, and I work.
I'm working now at Central Market.
I work for a company called Spectrum. I work in receiving, so we receive clothes and they are packed in boxes. So we have to leave boxes and scan them and do some other stuff.
What I'm doing at Mary Kay is just assembly. Mary Kay do a lot of cosmetic.
I got a friend named Paul Lee. He told me, when you get your per day check, I need you to get $1 and you keep it, you may remember.
Of course, they're always getting entry-level jobs, so theirs is usually the first to go anyway. And they're often, low-paying $6.50 to $8 an hour jobs. But sometimes because of the language, I think they're having a hard time understanding exactly what it is that the employer wants them to do. I think they're good workers, but I think they need to take time first to train them a little better, just because the language issue.
Then when 9/11 came, then of course that was a turning point in the lives of these guys too. More people, more skills, were looking for the same jobs these boys were after. So jobs did in fact become the #1 priority. And whenever we'd be there, every week we're in town, we're down at the apartments, and they would see and they said, can you get us a job, can you get us a job?
Then they laid me off. A lot of people was being laid off, not me. We were 7 at that day, we were laid off.
Their life was very cyclical in nature, in their villages, towns and villages, in their places of origin. During a certain season of time, there would be a labor-intensive period. There would be a time in which clearly there was a sense that we're getting up today, we're working all day, we will eat and rest tonight, and we'll go back to work tomorrow. And that would last for a season of time. But then also there would be a season of time which would be less labor-intensive. A fair amount of time sitting under the tree by the edge of the river, talking, watching the cattle maybe, but not so labor-intensive. That was the natural rhythm of their life. I met a Sudanese man in Nebraska who was describing this to me as the greatest hurdle for Sudanese people to overcome in terms of regular employment in the United States of America. What does it mean to be employed 52 weeks out of the year? What does it mean to go to work at least 5 days out of 7, and from early in the morning until late in the afternoon and the evening? And that all of that time you are responsible and accountable to someone else who is your boss, supervisor. From their perspective, this was described to me in some people's minds as almost like being in prison.
The most difficult thing to get used to is just a matter of time, because if you are to go to work, you need to go at the right time. And that was really very hard. So you have to get up earlier and prepare yourself to go to work. That was the most difficult thing.
I think speed is often an issue. Sometimes they'll say, oh, I lost my job. Now, why did you lose it? They said I was too slow. And I think that's just part of, they're not American. We had one guy lose his job because he sold liquor to an underage person, and that person was, an undercover police, was sent in by the police. So I think that's hard, and I think part of that is cultural too. It's being polite and being accommodating and trying to teach them that no, you have to be firm, and you have to say no to people. If they're underage, then you can't sell to them. So he went to jail.
The concept that when you're working with a group of people, you sort of make jokes about things that are job related. You tease one another. On one particular occasion, a young man who was working in housekeeping, who was pushing his housekeeping cart down the hallway loaded with his cleaning supplies and all, and a fellow employee stopped him in the hallway and said, do you have a license to operate that cart?
I'm working for maintenance, taking care of the floor, sometimes help the customers. If the customer come in and they don't know where these things are, I have to show them. I like so much.
They show us how to clean patient room, and that is what I do right now in ER, emergency room. When the patient got dismissed, I go inside and I clean. They like me, I like them. I got good supervisor and the other co-worker. Plus, Nelson is top here. He's my manager. He's a very good guy.
He has been here every day, cheerful, happy, very, very pleasant person to be around. I'll tell you one story about the fact that one of the nurses in ER told me, they said, we can't have this person work in ER anymore. And I said, why is that? And she says, well, it's just they're too cheerful. She said, this is a very serious place, and he says, they make life happy for us. And I just laughed, and I told her, I said, are you really serious? And she says, no.
I like it, I enjoy it, it's not hard, it's good.
Oh man, it's very different. He's very nice and respectable. He likes to help out, and he's a very hardworking man.
Housekeeping, they just like maybe whole age people. Because in Africa, culture is people, they say, no, when they see a young man doing clean, like something like that, they don't like it. But over here, every job is important.
Call the medicine area.
People don't care over here.
Call the medicine area.
So you're okay doing it?
Yeah, I'm okay doing it. That is it, how it is. I'm okay.
If you get a skilled job, you can get a good job. But if I got no skilled job, I can't do that.
need money. That is why I do it. After some time, if I got money, I go to school, I change. Nobody will know me that this guy was doing picture. If they know me, that is the life, not me doing me alone.
Their saying in Africa is education is our mother and our father, because where they lack parents, they feel education will help them take care of them.
And the high school, there were more proportion of unaccompanied children than would be reflected by their population. So they strived harder, they worked harder, and passed their exams at a level where they entered high school because they had such a value on that.
Many of these guys go to school and work and send money home, and if they have the opportunity to do 2 and 3 jobs, they'll do it. They'll do as many as possible, and they'll work as hard as possible because they have that belief system that if they can get an education, that they'll thrive here in the United States.
I go to Ridgeland College.
I'm taking English classes, reading and writing.
TCC, we mean math and reading.
I take English class in TCC. In St. Paul, I take math and also English.
This is a generation who lost the period of childhood when they should be at school. And now they are already big. They have to go to school, they have to be prepared to start from a lower level than their age would, so that they navigate their way maybe through elementary school level again, through high school level, and then get to college.
Some of the things that have been part of the reality check on that issue have been, they more or less had the understanding that they had achieved a high school education in refugee camp in Africa. And it may very well have been the equivalent of what a high school education looks like in the camp or in Africa. Clearly, it was not the equivalent of a high school education in the United States of America.
I think it's been discouraging. We had to start, in 5th and 6th grade books instead of the high school books. So that was hard.
The United Nations did a wonderful job in educating them, but they were in a refugee camp with 70,000 or 80,000 other refugees, and there are some holes in their education. And getting into a class in America, and almost all of them have no GED or high school diploma.
Abraham Mahmoud was matched with Sandy Gillis as his GED tutor.
It just boggled my mind to think about what it must be like to land in a country you know nothing about and have all the history that we do, and then how do you get up to speed on that? How do you catch what's significant about that to understand just the American way of life? Abraham would ask me what I meant by something that I said, and I discovered that I had said that something was cool, or he didn't know what that meant. And there were a lot of other times that we would be expressions, don't mess with me. What does that mean? He explained to me how difficult it was sometimes to understand American English. I told him that he was at an even greater disadvantage with me because I didn't just speak American English, I spoke Texan, and that's a whole nother language. So what I want you to do is, as you read, and you might want to read through the chapter and then go back and look for these words, but see if you can think about what those words mean based on what's in the book. One that sticks in my mind was that a young man was referred to as quite a ham, meaning that he was a cut-up and a comedian. And when the boys looked up that word in the dictionary, Daniel wrote a definition that it was part of a pig, and Abraham wrote a definition that it was one of the sons of Noah from the Bible, and of course neither of those were right. You just can't be a GED tutor and not get involved in other types of mentoring, though. It's hard not to get. I think it'd be impossible not to get connected with them at a different levels.
Among the Sudanese young men we've come to know, several success stories have come about in their pursuit of a college education.
We gave a talk, and fortunately the president of Conley County Community College, Kerry Israel, was in the audience, and he and one of his board members, they had a meeting with each other, and just as soon as we got through, they stood up and they said, well, we'll give 4 scholarships to for the Lost Boys if they want to come to Collin County Community College. And so we used that as a springboard or a catalyst to do other things for these 4 guys.
It was like, I don't know, it was great. I couldn't believe it that time. But it just tell us, I say, okay, I'll see. And when things come in reality, I was really happy.
So we said, well, if they're going to have a scholarship, then they need to live near the campus. And instead of spending 30 minutes or an hour a day one way to go to the college of their choice, which they had been doing, well, now they live right across the street. And I just think being in the campus environment, you know, it's 7 o'clock at night, well, I have nothing to do, I think I'll go over to the library or go to the computer lab.
He's doing really well considering his busy schedule. he attends, he participates, he's always attentive, always listening, so it's been great.
That you would work an 8-hour day, that you would study for several hours, and that you'd still have time to sleep and eat and live the rest of your life. And it's clear that they were not accustomed to living with such incredible stress and pressure on their time each day.
At the point when they have such a determination and to survive, because they were at a point of it's a matter of life and death. Here, that situation is not exactly. So they actually will begin to relax their guard, because staying here now, going to school is no longer, it's not a matter of life and death like they used to be there. They have to eat grass to survive the next day. They have to walk, they have to navigate their way across big rivers, they have to avoid lions, tigers, snakes, survive malaria, everything. It's a very different situation of life and death. That determination will be in the minds of some of them, but I don't think all of them will have it unless they are guided. They are told that, look, there are more important things here. Many of them are here. They're gonna. It's very easy to pick on the less functional part of life than the difficult one. Because going to school means you're gonna stay in it for a long time. You need the patience. You got to stay there.
As soon as they got acclimated to the United States and to Fort Worth, they understood very quickly that having a driver's license and having a car made a big difference. And very quickly after they got here, they all got their learner's permits.
We've been trying to teach them how to drive. That's a hoot, because, you know, I'll start them off in the parking lots over at the high school, and it scares me to death. And the next thing I know, I'm thinking, they can't go around this parking lot. They can't, you know, and so we'll go around like 100 times in the parking lot, and I think there's no possible way I can take them out on the street. Well, the next week, I see the same kid that I was taking in the parking lot driving around in their new car with, you know, I go, did you get a license? Oh yeah, I got a license last week. I think, oh dear God, please.
And it was my time to go to work, so I decided to go to the highway, and I was scared. I was really scared. So I just tried to go a little bit. When I go to highway, I let the car in front of me be in a distance, and I just hold it like this, going like that. It was scary. When I reached over there, I said, that's good. I thank God for that.
They got a little bit of bad advice from people around their apartments that, you know, you don't need to have a driver's license. If you can afford to buy a car, buy a car.
One guy in particular, I remember the story, they said, you want to buy this car? And the guy said yes. And he said, well, it's $2,000. Bring me $2,000. The guy gets $2,000, hands it to the guy. The guy makes a racial slur, gets in the car and drives off.
Virginia will tell you, when she was a teacher at Richland College, her biggest problems came from kids that would buy cars in the middle of a semester, or would come to school owning a car, and then they would quit coming to class. Well, why did you quit coming to class? Because my car broke down and I had to take an extra job to get it fixed.
You know, they get these great deals. Of course, that lasts for about 2 weeks when the car breaks down. And then all of a sudden they discover it takes $2,000 to fix the car. And how am I going to get $2,000? But they've already spent $3,000 to get the car, so they have no money left.
And so everything revolved around the car.
Try to find work where they can go on the DART, so they don't feel that they have to rely on their cars. They all want cars.
And on the way home from the automobile repair shop, the front wheel fell off the car, and he was broken down in the middle of the street. And so he said, and so the policeman came, which I'm sure included a tow truck driver. So the policeman asked me, what do I want to do with the car? And so I said, I don't want that car anymore. Take it to the forest. Whatever that meant.
Do you love this car?
Yeah, it is mine. It is my property. I should love it.
That you know, on the one hand, you've left the place you came from. You probably will never completely fit into the society that you're now in. You can't, in this case with refugees, you often can't go back to the society that you came from. You know, they also have to deal with American racism and the history of racism. You know, one of the things that's interesting to ask immigrants from Africa is given all you know about racism in a U.S. society, why are you here?
We don't look at you, you know. In fact, I became aware when I came to U.S. that there are colors. Someone are going to be called black or white or red or whatever. We don't have that. What matters is your attitude. I look at your attitude. I don't look at yours.
And here are young, innocent men from Africa who don't have an understanding of our history.
And in fact, they're more informed. They have learned about the African American struggle in their history. They also know the system that, you know, maybe not in Texas, but in other states, you can be guilty because of your color, okay, or wherever you come from. They are aware of that.
Immigrants from Africa do face, I think, a special situation because of the history of racism and of slavery and racism after it in the U.S. that makes it particularly difficult. Even though, as it turns out, for better or for worse, I guess one of the standard responses among white Americans or mainstream Americans or non-African American Americans is to make a distinction between African and African Americans, and often in a very racist way, saying, well, you people have come more recently, you seem more serious, you work harder than African Americans, which also creates a lot of tension between the African American community and the African immigrant communities.
No, I didn't have any bad experience. It's good. The one thing I realize here, when I walking, and any person can approach me and ask me, where are you from? That's very common to me here. I say, why? I look like African American. But how do they know me that I'm not African American?
Or in the past and in today, among many African American leaders, it's often thought that immigration has worked to the detriment of the status of African Americans. That oftentimes when we find that we need labor, rather than investing the resources to educate, train groups that are within this society that could move up, and one of those groups has historically obviously always been the African American group, we'll bring in people from the outside who then come in laterally at a status higher than the African Americans. And I think that's a source of ongoing tension. And which is going to make it hard, I think, to establish what seems to you, if you're not of African descent, to be an obvious alliance between African immigrants and African Americans is going to make that it makes it very problematic.
A distinction between the Lost Boys and refugees from other countries is that these young men are resettled in groups, and a strong support system exists amongst the brothers.
That really is something that's very unique about the Lost Boys, because as our church has assisted in sponsoring, say, refugees from Bosnia, there you're talking about a husband and a wife and children, or maybe just a couple. And, you know, so it is very different because the lifestyle they live in Africa is very different. And, you know, the lifestyle that they will continue here living as that group is something you just don't see very much in our country. You know, certainly you see young men that have roommates, but not generally 5 of them. And they certainly don't have the closeness that these guys do to one another.
These kids don't have families to depend on, they have each other. They have created a support system. And I think that has probably stood them in very good stead as they've adjusted here.
The boys were all experiencing the same challenges, the same problems, and they really take care of each other, like they take turns cooking, and you never hear them backbiting, or you never hear them talking ill of someone. If somebody has a need, they just chip in and everybody takes care of them.
If I don't work here, I have to stay in the apartment. I cannot live on the street. I can just live with anybody. But they cannot give me money, but I can still eat and sleep in the apartment.
Some get laid off and some don't have a job, but we still keeping our culture.
But they are going to get moral support from one another, and maybe sometimes material support in the case that you are in trouble and you don't have money. These are people like us without credit cards, without good credit, so you will need the cash from your friend or your brother. And these are guys who may take them very long before they can establish that. I'm talking about how this system works.
Sudanese help each other, we eat together, we work together, play together, everything, we share everything.
The fact that they're together means that there's somebody around who knows the whole thing that you've gone through. And I think that's probably really important to survival and adaptation at the beginning. People who can understand how difficult it is, not just because they say, oh gee, this must be really difficult, but because they know that they've gone through it. Now, at some point, because I think of the individualization of American society, some people are going to adapt better than others. Some people are going to learn to do whatever it is people are learning to do better than others.
Once they began to acquire personal possessions, that opened the door for some tensions and conflicts that probably were not present in their life before. A question like, who has a bicycle? Does everyone have a bicycle? Is one bicycle a better bicycle than the other 4 bicycles? These are things that they had to work through. I think the bigger issue there is the tension between individualism and community, shared experience.
When we were in Africa, we were not know that we are lost boy. Yeah. But the time I reached Fort Worth, I heard the name of lost boy. Yeah.
We don't know that.
We don't know that name.
Yeah. When we were there, we have our name. We were called minors because we were out of our parents. So this means that we are subtracted from our parents.
Minor is a young man, or they say Jechamer in Arabic word. He's also a young man.
They call us lost boy because we were isolated. We don't know where our parents are.
It is good because we are really lost. We didn't know well about our culture, and we don't know what our future will be like or something like that, so we are lost.
It's a really good name for me. Yeah. So but sometimes when somebody calls me another way around, I feel hungry, because why it's called me like that?
I think the media use it in order to get the attention of their audience, and I know how the Western media can pick up certain terms so that it goes through. Most of the people involved are not comfortable with the name, that they are being called lost boys.
When the kids were first coming across the border from Sudan into Kenya, it was just so striking. They were just all these children, some of them even just lying down and dying. And they were really coming out of nowhere as far as the Western world was concerned. And they were clearly children who had no parents, no anything. And I think some of the journalists who were there when they were first coming into Kenya looked at them and the analogy with the Lost Boys of Peter Pan, children with no parents, who were having to survive by clinging together, and they saw these little small groups of children just, you know, almost dying under trees and clinging together.
Yeah, in the play, in the movie Peter Pan, there's the Lost Boys. Yeah, they have no families either. However, they aren't quite as sweet as these guys. They're kind of hooligans.
I don't know who gave them the name, the Lost Boys, but my opinion has always been that if they weren't lost before they came to the U.S., they're definitely lost now.
What will happen to them in the future is very difficult to determine in so many ways, because some of them are going to succeed, maybe go to school and get proper education and become. Many of them are going to fall, even with the little programs here for them, are going to fall through the crack. And then they will become, in the real sense, lost people here in America. This country is a very complex country, the way it works, and for you to survive in it and be successful, you have to know how this system works in all its totality, so that you can navigate your way as an individual.
Actually, sometimes the name have effects, but sometimes names don't have effects. So the way I feel, I don't feel like I'm lost. The only things I know is that the only things that I may use the word lost is the freedom of the land that I have lost. That's the only things that I may use the word lost. But I don't feel like.
No, I didn't lose. I didn't lose.
Yeah, in my life, I'm not lost.
When I came over here, yeah, I still believe that I'm a lost boy. But the way I'm making it now, and if there's nothing that can just stop me on my way going, then I may not be called lost boy in 5 years' time, because I might be having, I'll have something that to change the name.
In fact, they not lost, they understand. We have given them a lot of orientation. America is both, you know, a heaven and hell. You can make it a heaven, you can make it a hell for yourself, because there's relative freedom in the United States of America, and if you misuse it, it can harm you a lot. But if you take the advantage of that, an opportunity, you will make it to the best you can.
Philip Bode once said to us, "There is no lost Dinka." Although the path is not always rosy, these young men are fortunate to have each other to hold on to, and they are hopeful about their future, including marriage and family.
Culture and life in Africa still has polygamy practiced, and so the first thing that I think they become socially aware of is you're going to have one wife here in the United States.
It's really fun to have a conversation with them about this. It really is. And I can recall several conversations when we talked about, well, in the United States you can have a wife, but you can only have one wife, you know, and they all laugh, think that's the funniest thing.
Yes, they're interested in girls. And one guy in particular who was going to enter the seminary, he claimed. And he was a beautiful person, but somehow I just saw him with a lot of little, it was tall Gabriel, a lot of little Gabriels walking around the house. I did not see him as a priest, which is terrible to say because he probably would have been a beautiful priest, but I just kind of know this guy. And so one time I said to him, "Gabriel, you're going to become a priest?" And he starts laughing. And I said, "I just see you with a lot of little Gabriels around the house." And he laughs and he goes, "Yes." In fact, he's the one, oh, if this is ever shown, I can't, he's the one who actually asked one of the volunteers for their hand in marriage last year.
And so he walked up to this senior high school volunteer just out of the blue. "Janie, my culture demands that I must profess my love to you, and so I just wanted to tell you that I've fallen in love with you." And so she was, oh, well, that's good, okay. And of course, as a typical teenager, you know, she'd say, you know, like, "I'll get back to you."
And so this is a minefield. This is a social minefield, because there is some potential for our young friends from Sudan to misinterpret or misunderstand, especially social communication from young women here.
Yeah, some people they say, "Why you say 5? Especially girls." The girl did that. They say, why you say 5 guys in a room? And what we told them, we say, we never got families. Maybe sometime we got families. We know we cannot be here. Maybe some years coming, we stay together. Some people may get families.
Family, I'm still young, so I'm not decided that one. So it's maybe some years, 5 years or 10 years more. So I don't have any idea of that at this moment.
And they will call you old man.
He's not an old man.
10 years plus 20 something. So if you add, that's too much.
He doesn't think it's
Anyway.
We were going through the line at Burger King, and as a matter of fact, this girl who spoke very perfect English, and it surprised me when she said, well, I'm from Africa too, I'm from Nigeria. And I said, oh man, you speak good English. And she was very attractive, and she was about his age, and she'd be about 20 or 21 or something like that, I guess. And so we sat down at the table, and I could tell that this young man was looking over at her, and a couple of times while we were talking. I said, are you looking at that cashier over there? No, I just, she was very nice. And I said, oh yeah, she was very nice. She was very pretty too, don't you think? Oh yeah. And so about a week later, I picked him up, and we were going out for someplace to do something, and he said, I said, well, let's get a hamburger someplace. He said, okay, yeah. He said, maybe we go back to that same Burger King again. And so I said, oh, I said, you want to go back to the same Burger King? I said, do you want to see that girl from Nigeria again? I haven't been thinking about her at all. And so then he didn't say anything, and then he was just sitting there, and then about 30 seconds passed, and he said, I haven't been thinking about her.
It will depend to the girls that are going to get married, yes. Because if she is from different culture, we can sit down and compare our culture and then balance the way that it's going to be good for us.
What happened here is look funny. When you get, sometimes if you get, we fear of divorce, because we don't like divorce, to make divorce. You get married and you get separate. Over here, women have opportunity to do whatever she like. She go in a court and say, I need to divorce, and she responsible of children. She take all children. In Africa, if you married, it's very hard to make divorce.
What is coming ahead, I don't know, but God knows.
I never decide. Yeah. So I'm not scared. I don't grow like me.
To me, she cannot be a difficult because I know the different cultures. But to my people, it can be a problem. Like my dad sometimes you don't want me to marry different people from Dinka. He want me exactly to marry a Dinka who can respect him and work for him. But me, myself, I understand other people's culture. And I believe that this is the reason we are fighting for, because in Sudan there is a lady to work for you. Wash your clothes, cook for you, do everything for you, and you beat her like a dog. But here on the world, you are not supposed to do that, you see. So when I decide to marry America, I cannot treat her like the way Dinka treats their wife or back in Sudan. No, I don't want that.
Right now, no. I can't right now, because I need a lot of things. With a good family, good money, and then you have family. But right now,
yes, number one, 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 yes.
They walked barefoot across the Sahara. Well, I think maybe some of the challenges here were just about as difficult. But they continue to have, for the most part, most of them have such a good attitude.
I have a lot of, I guess, tender memories of things as kind of a mother, from the mother perspective, of seeing these young men eat their first ice cream. You know, and them not really understanding what this cold thing, is this a good thing or is this a bad thing, you know, this ice cream. Just a lot of tender moments. So those conversations I've tucked away in a sacred place, and those are real tender to me.
Once you start it, it's like your heart won't let you quit. There's just something so special about those people. They're so loving, they're so trusting, they're so willing to learn. Your heart won't let you stop.
It has always been very clear in my mind, and I've always been very much aware of the fact that all of these young men are someone else's son. And when I think about you know, their experience and how incredible the challenge is for them to be separated from their families, and how much real personal loss has been experienced by Sudanese men. Because somewhere in the Sudan, there either is now or there was a man in their life who would be their father. And honestly, I can't imagine that much separation, that much loss in my own life, and how really painful that would be.
This volunteer work gives you a chance to feel very good about yourself. And so for that selfish reason is the motivating force to keep in there, like, you know, for the almost 2 years that we've been there. And we had one such comment today. He said, I want to tell you that, he said, you in Virginia are
He said he thought we were special because we worked with them from the very beginning.
he said, you're like my father and mother, and I want you to know that.
They taught me about courage, about the will to live in the most desperate of circumstances. They taught me about faith, how faith is a daily trust, and that it's putting one foot in front of the other. And you don't know how you're going to do that, but you just trust that's going to happen. And it's also about trusting even when you see your companions fall on the journey and die.
It's brought joy. I mean, they just bring joy. They bring joy into your home when the moment you walk in the door with them. They make you see the world differently.
It's about living in community and the strengths that brings. And in our culture, which is so individualistic today, that we don't really live in community anymore. We don't experience community at its best and at its worst.
The mentor families who are working with the families, they see that too. These people who don't speak English, who don't know what day they were born, they don't know how old they are, they're just like me. And we laugh at the same jokes. And we want the same thing for our children. And it has made the world smaller for all of us. We're alike.
Look at this population and you could say they have suffered as much as any population anywhere. I don't mean to diminish the suffering that other people experience, but these people have really gone through a lot. And so their suffering has been great. And they don't pretend that the suffering didn't happen. They don't block it out. They remember it. They have nightmares about it. But they also don't only dwell on that. They remember that they can be safe in the kindness of strangers.
I really appreciate that because they just was the time teaching me. I don't know really what they're hoping about. Sometimes I say, I ask myself, because they have nothing to get from teaching me, but they just volunteer doing that. It's really amazing, and I really appreciate that. And sometimes I think about it, because I don't get answer. Somebody volunteered herself or himself teach someone. We don't relate, we are not related, something like that, you know. It's amazing. Really amazed.
Having been orphaned and displaced, traveling through deserts and across rivers, witnessing death and escaping death, these young men are now here in the United States, trying to fit in, trying to make a life for themselves, while their hearts ache over their motherland, Sudan, still enduring the civil war.
Sudan, you hear sometimes millions of people have been killed because of religious reasons and because of land.
I miss my country. And why God made me to suffer like that? And not me, but the whole Sudanese. Make them suffer like that and not bring peace one day so that they can get freedom. And still keeping going on and on and on. I really become sad, very sad when I think about it sometimes.
Yeah, I ask myself sometimes, God created everybody with right and everything, but why is my right denied in Sudan? For me to leave my parents when I was 10 years old and I have to walk all the desert, coming to Ethiopia, coming to Kenya, coming to America, I have never enjoyed my parental love. Why? I ask myself sometimes and I get mad when I ask such a question because people abuse my right and that's why I'm here.
God, what have we done with the children of Sudan? We've been enslaved many years and a lot of people killing us. And you are the one creating us, and those people who are killing us are the people that you are created. Now, what can we do so that we stop the killing of our people?
Sometimes people blame God why you do that. Some people did. But I don't know what will be again and where it started. I do not know.
That's one thing I cannot ask myself, why my friend or my family died and I'm still alive. Why?
Maybe God has a plan for me. So many people have died and I have not. So maybe God has purpose for me.
In every situation, there is a solution for it. I went through the experience, and some people did not went through the experience. That's all God's preparation.
Since I'm here, I'm going to make all what I can to help others. Maybe that all God wants from me is to help others.
That's what I'm thinking. That's my destiny.
In every situation, there is a solution to it. Perhaps this is the philosophy that motivated the boys who were marching across the desert without food or water, the boys who were swimming as best as they could through the furious river, the teenagers trying to survive in an under-equipped refugee camp, and the young men who are now facing challenges and new hopes in a land of freedom.
I just think it's going to be very interesting 10 years from now or 20 years from now to see where they are. You know, you almost wish you could fast forward and take a peek into the future to see, you know, are they going to get those educations? Are they going to have the good jobs? Are they going to marry and have children? You know, can they someday go back to Africa and make a contribution if they want? Can they go back to Africa and maybe find family members?
There are millions of refugees in the world and lots of compelling stories out there. The story of the lost boys is just something that seems to resonate in us. It says something about us as well as about them. Their saga has raised the world's awareness of Sudan and her long, bloody civil war. Their presence in our neighborhood reminds us of our common humanity. The story of this young man will go on beyond here.
These are the lost boys and girls of Sudan.